Howdy folks, welcome back to the Practical Microservices stream, where we are continuing with converting all the code over to ES modules. And yeah, it's going to be just as exciting as it has been up to this point. So let's dive straight into it. It probably helped if I put the code up on the screen. So there we go. There's the code up on the screen. Can I remember what my macros are? I don't think I've closed Vim since I put them in, but okay, so identity is already done and we are just working on the send email component. So let's just go through and do that, shall we? Start with this file. Oh, which one was this? Was it that? Neat, it worked. Open that file. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's see. How did we do this? It was that one. It was. Look at that. But I think we have to still. Right. No. Sorry. It was that one. Right. The one I have bound to queue, that's for other people's packages, not the files within this project. Ooh, this one's got quite a few things. So you get treated like that. And then you like so. It helps to get these all on one line because then that other macro I have will work better. It looks like there are 8 there. Is that right? So we do 8 and then run that macro. Looks correct. So then the last thing should be this one right down here at the bottom. Okay, that file is done. Been bouncing around doing a second edition of the book, in large part because of these code changes that we need to make right now. Like one of the considerations that PragProg has is hard to make these changes and post them somewhere. Not every reader is going to be able to see that. Not every reader is aware of the Dev Talk forum where the errata basically go. And so we've got to keep those folks in mind, which is an excellent point. And so, but is there enough to change that a second edition would be warranted? Yeah, there's some design decisions I made in the book that I don't think are great that I would like to change, and a second edition would be a chance to do that. Working with them was fantastic, so that would be great. My big question is, what do we do in the meantime? Because if we did a second edition, it would take some time to get that in place. And whoops, I think I did that wrong. There we go. Anyway, so that's potentially in the works. So again, like if that's something that would be interesting to you, if we did a second edition, everyone that has a digital copy of the book would just get the second edition, I think is what they said. Don't quote me on that. But obviously for print, if you had a print edition, it would end up being different. A lot of like one of the changes we did to the PG version in here, that wouldn't even show up in the text at all, I don't think, because nothing changed with it code wise. It was purely in the package JSON file, and I don't think we went through that anywhere. But I think like the requires, those make it into the print at some point. And so, you know, it is what it is. It's the trouble with books versus online courses. I mean, online courses would, when they have to change, they're not any easier, but it's just that the distribution mechanism is a lot easier. That is the advantage that ebooks have over print books, but I don't know, just my host prefers the tactile sensation of books, and so that's what I favor. All right, let's see, you get changed like so. Wonder if writing an overall script for this would have been better, but I just think that could have led to a bunch of errors, because me doing this manually, of course, will have no errors and everything will work the first time, because that's just how it works, right? I didn't move this file. So now that file is moved. I also didn't move this file. So which one were we on? That's the one that's currently open. Okay, we're here. You get that. You get that. And then we come down and fix that. One thing I'm happy about as I do this, structure of the code is remarkably consistent. So, hey, that's a win. Like, what if every file had been different? I mean, if you can't achieve that when you're the only one working on a project, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not some grand achievement on my part, but I can still be happy about it. Like, I'm not saying that makes me awesome. I'm just saying it's a lot less painful than it could otherwise be. All right, so we've got 6 of you and then 6 of you. Why are these? Why is there a space in between here? I don't know. Speaking of remarkably consistent code, of course. All right, there's our export. Great. Load video. You get that. You get that. This general process that I'm engaging in here is something called a code migration. It has a name. Wow, that was totally the wrong thing. There we go. And you get that one. Ooh, this won't fit. Will it? Yeah. Okay, I'll have to do that one manually. That's fine. This is a test file, isn't it? Yep, I was trying to not do these at all. So let's just put it back real quick. I will get to the tests. Most likely they will require changes, but I am deliberately doing them second because I may need to do something different with them compared to all the other files. Maybe not, but I'd like to just do one thing at a time, I suppose. This file needs to be renamed. All right, so rename the file. Open the file. Correct the file. There we go. That's fine. Video publishing projection is that one. That's the test. This is not a test, so let's change it. Oh, UUID, and then the export at the bottom. And just keep doing this. One thing that's like weird to me about doing a stream like this is like I do some work in here that will span a calendar month. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's so slow. But it's because I work on it for an hour a day. So, I mean, some of the meetup prep I did, the project I wrote for it took like 2 weeks of stream time. And that's basically equivalent to like 1 day of full-time work. So, you know, not too broken up about that. Although I would always like things to go faster. Who doesn't? Whoever is like, you know what? This is too fast. Suppose it could happen, but I don't know, whatever. This is also one that needs to be fixed. You, and then down here. Oops, that was totally the wrong one. Okay, great. There's the video publishing component. Now the message store. What's this category file? Is this where we extract a category? Yeah. Oh, it's so nostalgic going back through all of this. Poured over this code so much in the process of writing it. There we go. Yeah, I poured over the code so much when writing the book and then didn't look at it for a very long time. And that's fine. That's just the way it is. Oh, whoops. Oh, apparently the dot key in Vim that's repeat the last action, it appears to not work with macros. Oh, no. Okay, so it would just do whatever the last step that the macro did was. Because that's all the macro is. It just records a sequence of steps and then does them again. Ooh, this is different. So we're saying export default create message store. This is something I would change in the code. This would be the hard part, I think, of redoing it is now that I understand Eventide more, I'd probably want to copy some of its patterns. And so this message store object that we built in the book, like just contains everything you could do with the message store on this one object. And that's a big surface. It would be hard to have a substitute for that in test, which is why there's, I think, some nonsense about a memory message store in here. Is you can't directly access the writer like you can in Eventide. So then it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to rewrite it, I would really want to fix that design decision. So project. Ooh, can you do export as? Let's see. Export as. Export. Great. You can. Fantastic. Okay, so this would actually be export create read dot project as project. And do those take commas when there's a list of them? Probably. Yes, it takes a comma. Okay, great. So then for here, this would be oh, this one doesn't need any renaming, so it can just be as it was. Okay, that's a test. This is not a test of the emergency broadcast system. Malibu fires and radio towers conspire to dance again. I don't know if you've heard Bad Religion's song, Los Angeles is Burning, but there, now you've heard part of it, so that's great. So this is again an export default, create read, and then you become export. I'm just going to put it on multiple lines from the get-go because it's easier to read things when they're vertically aligned. All right. So you, I feel like I'm slamming the keyboard as I type this stuff. Makes it feel more important. That's what's nice about an external keyboard when you type like that. It's not your computer that's getting hit. Okay, that's the subscription. That was the toughest file of the whole thing to do. That one, subscribe here, that's kind of... there's a couple of different concepts in Eventide rolled into there. The most obvious, of course, is the consumer gem is what subscribe is accomplishing. But in addition to that, we've got the polling mechanism. We have the position store is all rolled up into here. Yeah, anyway, okay. But we're not relitigating the design right now. We are converting over to ES6 modules. Those are the kinds of things that I would want to fix if we were to do a second edition. It's tough because it's effectively another book. And is that the best thing to write? I still have that. This is not fun. And we're just going to reorder those. Is another book about the mechanics of this stuff what is the best contribution to... Is that the best contribution we could make to the industry? I don't think that is the case. But maybe it is. I think I already converted that one. You have not been, though. I don't fully expect this to work when I run the test. I don't know what's going to work or not, which is not normally how I like to do things, but I'm viewing this work as slightly different. But we have the test suite in place, and that's good. Whoops. You get that one. Having this without a test suite, I don't even know what I would do. We got a test helper test. Nice. I'm hitting escape. Doesn't that... Oh, neat. Okay. Temp, you just held the email file, so I don't think there will be anything in there. All right, I think that is a first pass of everything. I'm not going to write the nerd tree there. Ooh, what just happened? Okay, reopen that. So let's try to, and if I'm, oh, right, I got to switch off camera real quick to close some things. Oh, what happened to the cool glowing border? How long has that been gone? Is it still here? No, we still got it there. That's strange. There used to be a border thingy running around. Did I accidentally delete that? Always a possibility. Bot command, soundtrack, blah, blah, blah. Twitter. Webcam overlay. Huh. Well, whatever. Fix that some other time as well. Great. All right. What was I doing? Seriously, what was I doing? Oh, right. I've got to switch off and then go shut off a Docker container that is running and a web server. That should get us going. So if I run you... Sorry, I'm just making sure this is working before I switch back to the terminal window view. There we go. We got it. All right. So in the lower right, which you can't really see because where the feed of my mug sits, it's covered up, but the image is running. Like that's just not even necessary stuff right now. Sorry, yawning right on there. npm test. What explodes? Okay, shoot. This is what I was afraid of. Yeah, we've got to move all the test files over. It's genuinely not that surprising. Ooh, the migration files. What about example messages? No, that's okay. All right, let's do the migrations. Not sure what Connects is going to think of that, but oh, I think we're going to need like something like that. And then I know we can just say const up, const down. How about that? They're simple enough functions. You know what though? That's not what I meant to do. I'm going to undo the changes I did there. Let's wait to see if Connects requires it before we change these. So move that back to just being a JavaScript file, and we'll move this one back to just being a JavaScript file like so, and then we can close you. I'm sorry, I'm sleepy. Haven't had enough sleep lately. No, let's go ahead and move this file. There we go, open it, and 2 of those. 1 of those, and then it's just a test, right? So these, oh no, this one would need to change. This pattern is going to be all over the code, so I think I want another macro for that. So we'll record R, and again, delete the word, import. Now, the trouble with this is that it's not always going to be config and reset. but it will always be a left curly brace. So what we could do is move over to hit percent to go to the corresponding one. Move over one, delete word, delete one, then type from, like so, and then we can go to the end of the line and delete the one character, go back to the beginning, and we won't have many of those in a row, but I'll still move down one. Finish the recording. Okay, so let's undo all of that, and you are R. Sweet, that worked. And you don't export anything, so from that point on, you're good. So maybe the tests won't be as difficult as I thought they would be. And so it was kind of silly to look at them that way. So two of you, one of you, and then that one. Neat. Okay. This is a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be. That's silly. So you get 3 of you. That and that. Nice. Creator videos, tests. What do we have here? 3 package imports, the UUID, and then the test helper. Great. Like so. And you. Uh-oh. Where are we? That's when we were just in, so there we go, like so. Great, so there's all those tests. Let's go find the others. So anyway, thinking through second edition some more, though. Like, it wouldn't be a sequel book. So I may, in a second edition, swap out certain chapters. Oh, hey, neat. That one worked, even though we had a third thing in the import there. That's great. There are some chapters that might go because, you know, in hindsight, they weren't super important to what we were trying to do. Because the page count needs to stay about where it was. And Prog targets about 250 pages. Now, it's not that they'll never publish one that's greater than that, but you need a good reason for it. Because the thing is, people don't read books very much. And it's an endeavor to make one. And so if you're going to make it, would people perceive it as having enough value to buy it? And if it's really long, that's a discouraging factor. We can make whatever comments we want about the state of society that we don't read long books very much, but that doesn't change the reality of trying to run a publishing business in the here and now. So, wow, that was totally not the right thing. Hit those in the wrong order, that's why. You like so, and you like so. Neat. Okay. What chapter is what? Let me grab a copy. Take a little break from the tedium here. Some feedback I got was that the first chapter wasn't super helpful. I like it still because like it was a book written for web developers, and web developers are familiar with web servers. And so it was kind of a come to where a web developer is to start introducing the ideas. The next one, writing messages, is where we start developing writing, connecting to MessageDB, and how to interact with it. I'm not saying the design of my toolkit is good. But I think it is the only written thing. And the Eventide folks did put out a "So you want to write a message DB client," but it was high level considerations. We actually built one, and that was good enough to ship something to production and have it run stably in a stable manner. Stably. I don't recommend using my book code for running things in production because I think there's ergonomic problems. Like, I'm not a big fan of TypeScript and extensive type checking systems, but when you're writing a message, it's really nice to know, does this property actually exist or did I misspell it? And when in the book, we just dealt with raw JavaScript objects. And so in practice, working with the team, we got messages that were written incorrectly because of typoing things in the raw objects. So in chapter 2, we talked through what writing a message would look like, right? And we got to the point where, okay, now it's time to put it into the message store. So that's where we bring that in and we go, oh, you can actually see the old order of the columns in MessageDB. So I reproduced them here in the book. We went through all the different columns in there. That chapter would stay. So one of my big things is if I did a second edition, would I still do this in JavaScript? Or would I just do it in Eventide? If we did it in Eventide, we wouldn't have any of these chapters breaking down how to write the client because it would already exist. What that would mean then is we'd have to have the chapters more focused on how to use Eventide. But we would end up jumping into the project code a little bit sooner because we did have to take this tangent here to build out how to interact with MessageDB. And that was before we really wrote the project code. We had this example of the page views. It was interesting. There was a critical review on Amazon that said the entire book project was just recording the views. And I could see how someone would come to that conclusion because the first 5 chapters only talked about recording the views and counting them up. But the reason for that was we didn't have a library in place yet. And so this one simple thing that we wanted to do of recording a view and then creating view data out of the results, we didn't have the infrastructure to do that. So, but by building out the infrastructure to do that, we were suddenly able to then focus on the other aspects of the project we were trying to build. So if you only read the first 5 chapters, you would think that the only thing we did was record video views. So then chapter 5, subscribing to the message store, we might actually end up having a same sort of thing. Because if we were doing Eventide has a number of pieces and you have to understand what all of those pieces are. And so we could take the same recording views thing and then just show how to do that with Eventide. But one of the other challenges would be if we're now in the Ruby world, we want an application, a web application. That was a really big part of it. Was I was dissatisfied with most writing on the topic because it would show only one portion of the system. And what Practical Microservices gave that I don't know if other titles have since then, it's actually one written for the Go language by a guy named Michael Stack, who's a friend of mine. I haven't read his book yet. I do intend to, but let's see. Michael Stack, Microservices, Go. Yeah, I haven't read this book yet. I want to. I don't know if he gets into the full stack, so to say, and shows the entire application layer down to components. I don't know if his approach is autonomous components either, but I don't know. Check it out. Stack's a good guy, so I have only positive things to say about Stack. Anyway, yeah, so if we're showing Eventide, we'd still have to go through what all the pieces of Eventide are and show them in the context of something. But I really feel like that could fill an entire book, and I just really like the idea of most of the writing still is just high-level concepts of what microservices are and things, and we wanted to build something that actually ran so that you could see the complete picture. The user registration flow. The thing is it was a useful thing to talk through in order to illustrate how pieces fit together, but I wouldn't ever actually build such a user registration flow in a system that I was working on. Like that, I think is better left to a third-party provider like Auth0 or Okta or something. Did one acquire the other? I don't know. Whatever. So that chapter might cut it out, because I honestly, if that is the way that I would build something, wouldn't it be more interesting to show how would you integrate something like Okta into autonomous components? So maybe that one would be on the chopping block to be redone. And so you start to see like a second edition isn't to just go in and edit something, because we can do that. We can make some edits. It won't help the print version. It would help future print versions. But the electronic versions would benefit from just a few updates. If it were just the PG version issue, we would just do that. We would update that and publish a new edition, not a new edition, an update to the current edition. But Camel Case Keys, its current version, requires modules. I suppose we could just update the PG version and pin Camel Case Keys so that it doesn't require all the module stuff. Okay, if we finish the modules today, I'll do a second pass and see if we could just do that. Because if we could do that, then those are just some simple code changes I could send them. My current endeavor is, how do we get people who are just getting the book now so that they're not having this frustrating experience on first run? That's what I'm after. Anyway, okay, so the registration flow. Oh yeah, and in there I did the part with the validation being done by using view data. So the registration request comes in, we query the view data to see if that username has been used before. And that does absolutely have a race condition. I think that the validating eventually consistent data section in there on page 99, I don't think I said anything in there that isn't true, but that's not the same as I would recommend doing it this way again. My own experience has grown, and there are different ways that I would handle this uniqueness reservation pattern that I think would be stronger if we were using Eventide. You can do reservation streams with what's in the book. It's just, there's no right dot initial, so you would just have to remember what the pattern is. Implementing your first component, we would definitely get to that point. I'd probably tone down all the silly humor a little bit. Like, it was fun, but might have been a bit much for the book. Getting a stream's current state, that got us into projection. The discussion there could be tightened up, probably. I don't think the identity component was a bad component at all. But again, if we're not doing user registration, do we need this component anymore? So obviously we would implement our first component at some point in the book, but the specific example would have to change. And then authentication is another chapter. So yeah, if we didn't deal with, my focus was showing the mechanics, and in so doing, I chose an example thing that we would do that I would never actually be like, hey, we need to custom roll this in our own system. So chapters 6 through 8 could be completely redone. The email component, we had to be part of the user registration process, but like, that's how we used it, but being able to send emails is a useful thing within a system. So, but again, I think that example might go away if we were getting rid of the user registration purpose. Now, there's nothing magical about sending emails, and if you learned how components worked, then it wouldn't be hard to take that and figure out how to do an email with it. I mean, you'd have the special consideration of the fact that you can't tell if an email has been delivered or not. All you can you really even know if you sent it? I suppose if you get, your email provider has an idempotence key, but then how do they know if it's been sent, right? So anyway, Chapter 10, performing background jobs with microservices. I think that one would just stay as it is, especially for what the project is with this Pluralsight knockoff or YouTube knockoff, having to do stuff to the videos, perfectly illustrates how we don't need this weird one-off solution that we call background jobs, which is just a really, I'm going to say poor. It's an ineffective way of building what streams are and building what autonomous components are. Like, I've seen so many problems with job queues. It's just sad, the pain that we go through. And so I think that's a powerful chapter to show, like, hey, if you're already doing microservices, it's not, everything's already a background job, in quotes, of course. So the async aware user interfaces, I'd like to dive more. Would I like to dive more into that? So at the time, I used React a lot in my personal work and professional work. I didn't put it into the book because I thought that was going to be a rabbit hole, because JavaScript stuff changes so fast. That's what I'm experiencing right now with the purpose of what we're doing on the stream here. But right, so if we bring in React now, suddenly there's so many other things we need to talk about. We could just make the assumption that anyone reading the book understands React already, but I don't think that that's a fair assumption to make. But I think chapter 11, building async aware user interfaces, did a good job of setting the stage. Like, here's what you need to consider, right? When you submit the request, your response isn't ready, or the result of the request isn't ready. We have to render a response though. And so if we did a single page application, or even, like, we're not supposed to call them that anymore. I haven't done a ton of browser UI work in the past several years, so I'm not entirely up on the current vocabulary, but where was I going with all of that? Right, if we were going to try to deal with the asynchronous nature of the execution of things, that could get really deep. And I don't know that a book would be the best way to present that kind of material. So I think that chapter did its job of saying, hey, here's what you got to be aware of. When you submit the request, the result of the request isn't ready immediately. So make sure you're accounting for that. Chapter 12. So by the end of chapter 11, you've seen receiving a request and writing a message, a component handling it, a component collaborating with another component, properties like idempotence that you need to worry about with that. You've seen what I called an aggregator in the book. I don't like that term anymore. I would say view data component, so we would update that terminology, that vocabulary, too many ology words. And then by chapter 11 too, you're dealing with the fact that you submit a request to do something, and how do you build the user interface when you can't just sit there and pause and wait for the response. I do think that the UI thing could be expanded a little bit more, because I just gave the one example, but there are other patterns you can do. Like, one I've heard Greg Young talk about is like, well, don't navigate to a screen that would show the result, right? We have this thing in CRUD apps, create X, then immediately navigate you to X's page. And so if you're eventually consistent, X may not be available yet. So, like, do we have to move you to page X? Would have been good to explore things more like how, depending on your domain, the user doesn't even expect to see the thing at all. Like when you submit an online bank transfer, like, you don't see that for like 3 days sometimes. Or when you order a product on Amazon, they don't take you to an order details page. They take you to a, hey, thanks for submitting your order. Now that you've done that, here are some other things you might want to buy. Plenty of products. Well, there's a Ryan George video. Go to YouTube and search Ryan George buying products on Amazon. And he's just like, hey, a lot of people buying products for the husbands, and a lot of husbands liking those products. It's a great video. The deploying components one, I like the idea of having it, but it would need to drastically change because we don't have Heroku available to us anymore. And then if we did use event-tied, you have to break from standard event-tied conventions to get it to work with Heroku because of where it expects to find database credentials and that sort of thing. We've gone through that in the early days of the stream. So if you'd like to see that revisited, just comment. So then chapter 13 was debugging components. And what we did in there was, like, we said, okay, cool. We've got all this brilliant structured data, in the message store, what sort of tooling could we build to look at that to understand the state of the system. And one thing we did in there was we built this all consumer subscriber stream. So you could make a subscriber that would see every message in the message store. Since then, I've learned that that's actually challenging to do well. Running the code on your computer as the only user of it, you wouldn't ever see a problem with it. But there's a way, something that happens with PG and transactions, that basically the global position column there is backed by a PG sequence. And when a transaction is opened and you insert a message, it consumes part of that sequence. But if another transaction came in to the same category, those would be serialized. Whatever the case may be, like when you do the insert portion in a transaction, it consumes positions in the global position sequence. Later transactions could come in and commit first. And so you could potentially end up missing earlier messages. And so doing the all stream based on just the position, you could miss messages. And so we would have to take a slightly different approach to it, because for what we were trying to do with these admin tools, you have to see every message. And it didn't really matter that you saw them in the order that they were written. So as long as different categories, whatever. So we kind of have to have a thing that we would know what all the categories are and be able to subscribe to them all. So I think that chapter would largely remain the same, but we would just need to deal with the all consumer concept a little bit differently so that we wouldn't run into this transaction issue. That would then take us to chapter 14, testing. And I'm actually like for my daily email list, which of course you can see at practicalmicroservices.com. You go sign up there, go to the archive. I've been doing a series on the test-driven development flow with Eventide. It's been a while since I've done an installment in it because I've been slammed with some work stuff and have needed shorter content. It takes longer to write those because I've got to write the code out and everything. One thing I didn't like, and I think it's the book format, not like this book's format, but in a book. Like on the stream, when we've developed these components, we've done it in a test-driven manner. We start with the test, we do all of that. I don't think that translates over to the written page very often. But what I don't like is it kind of sends the signal of like, oh, testing is this thing we do after the fact. I think I talked about it like, no. I write the test first when I develop these, but we are giving it its own chapter. And I think that's kind of okay for the book because it's like, we want to localize all the information about testing in one place so that you can find it better later. And then chapter 15 is the continuing the journey. So we're done. Here are things we didn't talk about. And that could change because maybe with not having all the user registration stuff, we could get into more things like concurrency. Although if we used Eventide, we wouldn't really have to dive into how to build it. So I don't know. That's just kind of an overview of what I'm thinking. What would a second edition be like if we did it? Yeah. All right, fine. Let's get back to this. Oh, it's a test file, so nothing to export at the bottom. Oh, I missed one. This is not a test file. I just didn't rename the file. Might have missed a few more of those along the way. Whatever, if it happens. Templates pug wouldn't be affected by this. That's public. Here's a test. So let's change you. That's that one. Surely there's a test in this one. Yeah, so I'm torn on it. Really just not sure which approach to take. Nope, didn't want R. Not before pressing the Alt key anyway. Here's another one. What I really want to write though, but again, it's the question, would this be useful, is something that talks more about, like, has the kind of low level stuff we got into with practical microservices. Like we actually built something. It was a hands-on book, and you come out of it being able to know the mechanics of a system. Like if you read practical microservices and I were hiring for an event tied position, not that I would ever hire for an event tied position. Let me rephrase that. I would absolutely hire for a position that uses event tied because I think it's a wonderful technology, but I would never bill it as this is an event tied developer position because I don't believe in hiring developers for specific technologies for a couple of reasons. One is that then suddenly the person's identity is completely wrapped around the specific tool that you hired for. And often business requirements are such that, we don't need programming language X right now. We just need a problem solved. So I like to hire focused more on your job is to solve problems. And sometimes that's going to use technology, probably more often than the average bear, of course. But the focus is on solving the problems more so than it is on typing code in a specific language or with a specific framework. And like if you're a younger developer in your career, if you want to really advance your career, I would say learn that lesson early. Suppose you're hired into a job that mostly uses Ruby when you're coding, like you're not being hired to write Ruby. You're being hired to deliver value. And if all you do is type Ruby without a focus on value, then you're going to struggle with maybe requirements change. We're not going to type as much Ruby, or you're going to just see everything as something that needs more Ruby code. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, but honestly, I think the best solutions are the ones that don't even need code in the first place. And by that, I do not mean no code solutions as they're branded, but just because those are code. No code solutions are code. Let's just be honest about it. It's just a different kind of code that's harder to debug, has no version control, and it's difficult to reason about. And then when it finally doesn't do everything you need to do, then you've got to hire specialized people to maintain it for you anyway. So there's no such thing as no code at all. All those solutions are just a different kind of code. And that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that means they're bad. I'm just saying, let's be honest about what they are. But if you encounter a business problem that you can work through without having to produce more code, that is fantastic, right? Because code's a liability. It's something that has to be maintained. Case in point, what I'm doing on this stream. This is the kind of stuff you get to deal with if you do choose to write code. So if you can find ways to deliver value without producing additional liabilities, then that's a good thing. Liabilities aren't bad per se. It's just there is cost to software that goes well beyond the cost to get it written. And none of this is original thought on my part. So I'm not claiming I'm the first person to ever recognize this, but I figured this would be something more interesting to talk about than like, okay, then I'm going to tap this macro and then put this character here. So I don't know if it is or not. Just really want to be done with all of this. Sometimes the journey comes before the destination, as the Knights Templar would say. I think that's what they're called in the Stormlight Archive. But that ended for me about 3 files into this. So cool, you worked, and then you're that kind, and you are that. Nope, that kind. You are great. And you are that. Nope, that's not it. See, Knights Radiant. My daughter lets me know. Yes, thank you. Knights Radiant. Knights Templar. That's like from the Da Vinci Code. Not the same thing. Not the same thing at all. I haven't finished that series. Of course, nobody has, because Brandon Sanderson hasn't finished that series, and until he does, The rest of us won't be able to either. What I mean is I have not read every published book about it because I am a stubborn human. And I read Words of Radiance, which is the second book. The third book has material in it that happens after, in the story's timeline, after the Arcanum Unbounded book. It has material in it. In Arcanum Unbounded that happens timeline-wise before Oathbringer, which I also have up on my shelf there. Sorry, this is my copy of Oathbringer. I'm never going to read this particular copy because I camped out in the cold to get it. It's the 67th released copy of it. I didn't get number 1 because you had to be camping out for like a day. But Brandon Sanderson signed it. For one who braved the cold, and he drew little cold spren around me in my tent. So that was fun. Anyway, there's stuff in Oathbringer that happens after stuff in Arcanum Unbounded. Though I don't think I've been changing this to MJS, Curses, and Rat. Well, we'll see when we try to run the test. And, right, so, but to read Arcanum Unbounded, there's stuff in there that you should read after you've finished the second Mistborn series, not trilogy, because he recently released or is about to release a 4th book in there. And then complicating the matter further is that I'm reading Mistborn in French because I took his class and he brought some foreign language editions and I grabbed a French Mistborn. And yeah, so I'm stubborn. That's why I'm behind in the Stormlight Archive. All right, cannot use a module outside of a module. Fair. Oh, like, oh, neat. So now there's no test output. Right, because we're looking for .mjs file or .js files. And let's see, so to fix this, we would go to package. No, I'm not going to scroll to it. Let's just open it directly. Tests, crossenv. Oh, right. That's what that one does. That's for, so that you could run this on Windows. I think that environment flags like this are suboptimal because the idea of this is like a whole bunch of things key off of this to do their thing. I like to see more like, well, tell me what that specific thing is and let me set that to true or false, not this environment variable whose full impact I don't understand. Of course, you would need to be MJS as well, wouldn't you? All right, here we go. All right. This is a different kind of error, and we got 3 minutes, so we are not finishing this today because I took that big old long tangent to talk about the second edition, but that is a big thing on my mind right now. So what are we doing? Did I miss one in admin streams test? Admin streams test. No. Okay, so require a VS module. Oh, that's the module that's being required. Who's requiring it? It's tape that's requiring it. Oh, that's a real bummer. That is a real bummer. So when we run the tests, we call tape and we pass them all of our MJS files. And it's able to glob this so that it expands it and gets all of the individual files, but then it requires them. But the files are MJS files, they're modules, and you can't require an MJS file. And I don't think we can change tape. Maybe we have an old version. No, we put it to the latest. Oh, that's terrible, because I will die on this hill for tape. I do not like Mocha. I don't like Jest. The kinds of problems they fix, I just aren't problems that I have. And it's like, so I don't want to bring the tools in. Oh, not excited about this. All right, well, I'm going to have to end it here because I need to get back to my day job. But where we're left is that the test framework doesn't handle modules. Oh, I missed a bunch of... Let me just go real quick here. Did I even convert you? I did, so it's just not renamed. This is why we have test suites. Okay, so let's see. You're now hopefully fixed. I don't think this is insurmountable, because this is why I hesitated to rename all the test files. So I'm just going to type one thing real quick here. So node test. No, it's not like that. It's node source, aggregators, admin streams test. This is the one we're working on. Cannot find test helper. All right. So actually running one of these at a time. Running one of these at a time isn't going to work, because to fix this particular error, we have to try to run the whole suite. Okay, so I think what we can do is tape can only talk to JS files. JS files can deal with modules, provided we deal with the asynchronous loading nature of it. So it may just be that we end up having to do, I don't know, something that's like... or return, import whatever it is that we're importing, and then calling then. And then we get to, I suppose then the module that we're getting would have to come in there. Anyway, something like that, so that the test files can be JS files, but the rest of it can be modules. Or we could get ditch camel case keys, but that's a bit extreme. I would need to replace that with something. Or I could do some research to find out if there's a different way to deal with this. So I'm going to take that last approach there. Let's see, what's today? It's Thursday, and it's the 6th. That is a significant day to me. Research if there's a better way to deal with all this. Okay, I don't know what that means. All right, have a lovely day. Till next time, happy coding.